Hello, everyone. Welcome. Give me a second here just to get things set up and hopefully running here on multiple channels. This is the Training Cafe, and I'm Eric Hörst back for another episode, a live coaching session. We'll get started here in another minute or two. Let's just give a bit of time for some folks to find us here, and we'll get started. Of course, if you're new to this whole thing, the Training Cafe, it's something I've been doing now since way back in the COVID days. So I guess 5 years and counting, trying to meet with you, my climbing friends around the world, once or twice a month, usually on Mondays around noon Eastern time, though that can be fluid depending on my work situation and travel situations. But today, I'm coming to you from the snowy Red River Gorge. Sad but true, I woke up to a coating of snow this morning. Perhaps you saw my little Instagram story that I posted when I woke up and saw white on the ground. And there's flakes flying, and the temperature is only about 30 degrees outside at noontime. So obviously, I am working today, not climbing. But the warmer weather will come back. It always does in November. So we're not like into winter season just yet. As people filter in here, if you want to type into the comments box where you're watching from, one of the beautiful things I love about the Training Cafe is that we ultimately have a global audience. Sometimes during the live stream, not so much, but after the fact, a bunch of folks watch this live stream, or actually, I guess on demand, it would be after the fact on the Training for Climbing YouTube channel. And so I always love seeing how broad the reach is and how big and beautiful our climbing community is around the world. We're all connected through our passion for climbing, despite our different origins and cultures and lifestyles. And that's a beautiful thing. So I guess it's soon time to get started here. Just a little bit about the format. The first part of the Training Cafe, I do a little bit of a lecture. I am a coach and scientist and teacher at heart. And so I always like to kind of begin things off with a bit of a topic of the day. Today, we're going to talk about tendon training. It's a very exciting subject. It's relatively new to exercise science, the whole concept of tendon training. We think about training muscles, but not training tendons, but we really should be thinking that way. And there's a lot of new research the past decade that empowers us to take control over how our tendons adapt, just as we know how to train in different ways to get our muscles to adapt. So that's kind of the focus here of this podcast or live stream. And really what I'm doing is I'm giving you a preview to a podcast that I'm going to be releasing tomorrow. As you may know, I have a Training for Climbing podcast. I release an episode every month. I've been doing it for a decade or more, actually probably closer to 15 years. And tomorrow's podcast is a powerful one because I'm going to release my white paper. For the past 5 or 6 years, I've been really drilling down into the research on tendon training. And I've been, working through more than 30 different researchers from, I think, 18 different countries. So this is not just research done in one place by one guy, but it's a very diverse collection of researchers around the world that have interests in tendinopathy, which is, the disease of tendon injury, tendon training, sports performance, all these things. And there's a lot of information that we can leverage and apply to Training for Climbing. And so you're going to want to listen to that podcast tomorrow. And along with that podcast release on Tuesday, I'm also going to release my white paper as a free PDF download. It's something like 16 or 18 pages long. You'll be able to download and kind of follow along with the podcast. You'll be able to see the diagrams that you can't see in the podcast. And it's something that is pretty intense and weighty material. You might need to read it or listen to it a few times. And I do believe, though, as it sinks in and you grasp the material, you'll be able to apply it to take your training to a new level and to really be able to think differently about your training. Again, when you go to the gym or lift weights or do hangboarding or even go climbing or bouldering, you're not just working out and training the muscles. You are also training the connective tissues, and understanding the processes at work is critical to helping lower your injury risk and empowering you to be able to develop higher performing tendons that are more resilient and can actually help you achieve your climbing goals and dodge injury bullets. So that's some exciting stuff I'm going to be releasing tomorrow in my podcast, and I'm going to give you a preview of that here today. So I'll do that for maybe the next 10 minutes or so, and then I'll be answering your training questions. You can type them into the comments box. It could be on, finger training. It could be nutrition. It could be climbing performance. Any of those topics, I'm happy to address here in this training cafe. And I'm going to try to wrap this up around 12:30 because I have a busy afternoon, and I want to try to keep this brief and to the point. So you can type in your comments or questions right now, and I'll get to them in just a bit. Before we start off with that main topic of the day, this is the Training Cafe, and one of our rituals is to toast. In the spirit of climbing, climbers around the world unite. Let's sip our coffee or other beverage together. Because what is better than talking about climbing and training and sipping coffee at the same time? It's all great. And I'm a coffee drinker. I start at 6 a.m. I continue through the midday hours, and then I cut it off because I need to be able to try to sleep at night. And that's kind of my little addiction, I guess, one of my few vices that I have here. Okay, so let's get on to the main topic of the day, and that is kind of giving you a primer of my podcast that I'm releasing tomorrow on tendon training. And, this is an exciting subject because it's something very, very different that not many people talk about historically. In fact, if you go back to the exercise physiology textbooks, many of which are still in use in colleges across the country, around the world today, they just kind of skip over tendons. They say, in summary, tendons are these inert structures that form in our youth and adolescence, and then in our adult years, they don't really change. And tendons connect muscles to bones and, transfer the force from the muscles to the bones. And that's the end of the conversation. But that is just an antiquated way to look at tendons. And we now know that tendons are living tissues that adapt much more slowly than muscles do, but they do adapt and can get stronger. They can get weaker. They can get injured. They can become higher performing. And so you understanding the processes that are involved in all of those things is critical to hopefully staying healthy and getting stronger year over year. So first of all, what exactly are connective tissues? Well, they're comprised of tendons, ligaments, and the extracellular matrix. And the extracellular matrix is, you can think of it as the fascia that surrounds the muscles, that is made of collagen, just like tendons and ligaments are, but also, the collagen fibrils that comprise the tendons that connect muscles to bones. They don't just stop at the muscle. They don't just join to the muscle and end, but we now know that those tendons fan out through our muscles, through the length of the muscles, kind of like a river delta. So, you have the tendon that connects to the bone, feeds back and connects to the muscle, but it just doesn't stop at the muscle. It fans out and extends through the muscle, kind of like scaffold. If you think of the scaffold of a skyscraper, under the walls, you have those metal beams that extend up through the length of the building and carry the weight of the building. That's kind of analogous to how the tendons fan out and have these collagen structures that run through the length of the muscle, kind of surround the muscle units and the muscles themselves, and are these collagen scaffolds are really what gather the force the sarcomeres that comprise the muscle, that those sarcomeres contract and shorten the muscle. And in the old days, they just described, oh, the sarcomeres contract and pull on the tendons, and the tendons pull on the bones. But now we know that actually, as the sarcomeres contract, a lot of the force is actually transmitted laterally to those collagen scaffolds and then is carried down to the tendons and the bones. And so when we talk about connective tissues, it's not just ligaments and tendons, but it's also that extracellular matrix that comprises and kind of bundles the muscle fibers and gathers the force that the muscle contractile fibers generate, and then transmits it through the muscle to the tendons to the bones. And so all of that is connective tissue, and it's obviously central to being able to create force, transmit force, and even depending on the stiffness of those collagen structures, the rate of force development. You know how you can tighten a suspension on a sports car to make it more reactive, more quickly, more quick to turn and accelerate and apply force to the road? Well, in the same way, as you stiffen up connective tissues, they transmit force more readily. There's less energy loss. And so you, as an athlete, get a higher rate of force development. And that's the stuff of powerful movements, dead point movements, doing lunges, and then being able to, grab a hold and summon peak force quickly to stick a hold on a dynamic move. All of that relates very much so to the stiffness of the system, not just the strength and power that the muscles can exhibit, but also it's to a large extent relates to how well your connective tissues are trained and how stiff they become. So those are the things we're going to be talking about in the podcast and that I address in the white paper. And the white paper includes some graphics to help you visualize. I'm a visual learner, and perhaps you are too. And so I need pictures and graphs to help understand new concepts. And so if you download that research PDF tomorrow, you'll be able to see those diagrams as well. So in any case, these connective tissues, they are, again, the old textbook said they form during your adolescence, and then in your adulthood, they're kind of static structures, like the steel beams in a skyscraper are static structures. They don't change over the life of the building. But that is not how collagen scaffolds and tendons and ligaments are in our body. They are constantly adapting and sensing. They're smart tissues that can sense the type of force, the frequency of force, the direction of force that they are being subjected to, and they respond as a result of those forces and the type of training you're doing or the lack of training you're doing. All of these things kind of signal to these connective tissues how to adapt or respond, or maybe not to adapt and maybe just slowly weaken over time. Because if you don't subject your tendons and ligaments to force, if you are bedridden, for example, or if you just stop training as an athlete, the lack of loading on those tendons and ligaments kind of leads you down this path of weakening, of having more disorganized and less stiff connective tissues that then, if you reintroduce forceful loading, can get you injured. And so it's very important to be regularly loading tendons and ligaments in an appropriate fashion, which that's a very big part of the white paper and the material I'm presenting. Is you just don't load them mindlessly and excessively, but there needs to be kind of a strategy to how you train the connective tissues, because they will adapt in different ways depending on the type of training that you're doing. So in any case, the strength, the stiffness, the resilience of these connective tissues is all a result of the mechanical loading type and frequency. Also nutrition. Collagen is protein. Our connective tissues, our tendons, ligaments, those extracellular matrices are pretty much pure protein and water. And if you are protein deficient in your diet, if you're not consuming the right kinds of protein, connective tissues collagen fibrils are comprised primarily of two amino acids, glycine and proline. And so if you're missing those two amino acids in your diet, or you're deficient in them in your diet, it shouldn't surprise you that you have a tough time getting your tendons and ligaments to get stronger. And maybe you are someone who's frequently injured. It could be a lack of protein and a lack of those two amino acids in particular. And recovery time. You just can't train constantly on your, if you load connective tissues excessively, they will become disorganized and weaken and potentially be injured. So you need to balance the mechanical loading, which is your training, your climbing, your other sports activities. You have to balance that with recovery time. And of course, you also need to have nutrition working for you, not against you. And then finally, this is important to note. There are other confounding factors that influence tendon strength and ligament resilience, and could be partially at play as to why some folks are more injury prone than others. Now, again, there's many factors at play that you need to sort through, but again, my white paper will hopefully open your eyes to all of these factors. And just a few of them that I'll mention here briefly. First of all, genetics. There are many genetic SNPs that relate to collagen synthesis in the body. And some people, depending what genetic polymorphisms have been passed down to you, are more prone to connective tissues injuries than others. Your age is a major factor, because after the age of 30, your body slows down its rate of collagen synthesis. It's one of the many changes that come as we advance into midlife and beyond. The 30s is the time of life when your skin begins to wrinkle. Skin is made up of collagen, just like connective tissues are. And so as your skin begins to wrinkle, it's a sign of damage and a sign of your body's inability to recover and maintain nice, elastic, responsive collagen in the skin. Well, the same thing is happening to the collagen that comprise your tendons, ligaments, and extracellular matrix. So it shouldn't surprise you as we go through into middle age and beyond, that our tendons and ligaments are a little less resilient, a little more prone to injury, a little slower to recover and respond. And so all of these things need to be taken into account. Hormone levels, particularly in women, how estrogen changes throughout the month can influence connective tissue quality and stiffness. And there's a period mid-cycle of the month where young women are more prone to connective tissue injuries. There's numerous studies that look at female soccer players and compare them to male soccer players. And the female soccer players are 7 times more likely to have an ACL or knee ligament type injury than the men. And the reason is the estrogen spike that they have mid-month reduces the connective tissue, the collagen cross-linking, and actually makes the tendons and ligaments more compliant during that part of the monthly cycle. And therefore, they're more lax and prone to having connective tissue injuries. And I've worked with quite a few female athletes over the years, female climbers in particular. And when it comes to like finger injuries, pulley injuries, I believe we are seeing the same thing, that mid-cycle, when you get the estrogen spike, the connective tissues, or specifically the pulleys in the fingers, become a little more compliant and prone to injury. And so if you can track your monthly cycle, that may empower you to dial back your training, do less ballistic training or campus type training and hard bouldering during that 1 week of your cycle, and hopefully reduce your chance of having an injury. And then a couple more things. Smoking slows down collagen synthesis and likely can contribute to weakened and perhaps subject you to a greater chance of connective tissue injury. And then also medications, certain antibiotics and certainly NSAID medications have been shown to slow collagen synthesis. If you go to a surgeon and have an operation, the things they will tell you is stop smoking and stop taking antibiotics or NSAID medications because it will slow your healing or recovery from surgery. And so these are things that, as athletes, if we understand that, we can make these changes in our training and nutrition that can positively impact our adaptations to our connective tissues. So many climbers. Climbing is hard on the body, especially our digits, our elbows, our shoulders, to some extent our back and knees and hips and ankles. But certainly the upper body are prone to injuries. It's a rare climber that doesn't get injured. And so the better you understand this material and are self-aware of what you're doing to your body, and you're able to modulate your training and your climbing, and just kind of develop an intuitive sense of what might get you hurt and what might actually benefit you, the smarter you can be in your training, your climbing, and ultimately you integrate that over many years or decades of climbing. It can put you at a completely different place 10 years from now, or as an older climber. What separates the people that, like myself, thankfully have a healthy, strong body at age 60, as opposed to another 60-year-old who's just a mess physically. There's a lot of factors, but being able to understand the science, the biophysics at play when it comes to our muscles and connective tissues can empower you to take more control and be more proactive in your training and your climbing. And hopefully, again, that will enable you to experience fewer injuries. I don't think, every climber can escape injury, because again, there are just some factors like genetics and nutrition and other things, what we do in our life outside of climbing, that influence how our body kind of will age and react to training and hold up to the rigors of sports. But the more you can kind of try to play a role in these processes, the better. Okay, again, I don't want to get too long-winded here. I do want to get to just a few training questions. If you want to type them into the comments box, I'll get to them in just a minute or two. But the final thing I want to just touch on here briefly, and again, download the white paper, listen to the podcast tomorrow when it's released, and you'll get kind of the full download of information. But the last thing I wanted to mention here is how there are different ways to train our muscles, or since we're climbers, talk about fingers, and they have different impacts on the connective tissues. And this is something that kind of at the end of my white paper and my podcast tomorrow, I'll get into a little more detail on these things, though ultimately training needs to be personalized. And so you need to have a coach who understands this material, or you need to self-coach and become someone who understands this material and can accurately apply that to design a training program that's appropriate for you and your situation, whether you're injured or not, and hopefully get you positive results and that make you stronger and more resilient against injury. But when it comes to training, there are a few different types of adaptations that result in the connective tissues. Again, the tendons, the ligaments, the extracellular matrix. If you do any exercise that is high load, it has a high mechanical load. Think about things like weighted pull-ups, or for the lower body squats, a heavy squat, weighted finger hangs, things that are high load and quite intense and relatively short in duration. They will provide a signal to slowly have the body respond by increasing collagen content. And over the long term, we're talking years and decades, even some slight tendon hypertrophy. That's another thing that nobody thought was possible a decade ago. Muscles get bigger from training, but nobody thought that tendons and ligaments do. But we do now know, in fact, that tendons and ligaments very slowly, given proper training and nutrition, will hypertrophy, will get stronger. The amount of collagen content will increase. Climbing surgeons, they look inside, when they operate on the hands of veteran climbers, they see the flexor tendons are a little thicker than in more novice climbers, climbers with fewer years of loading. Interesting study with fencers. Fencers have a leading leg when they're fencing. that leading leg takes a lot more force and loading than the trailing leg. Well, the patellar tendon of the leading leg over many years gets thicker than the patellar tendon of the trailing leg. And it's a function of that frequent forceful loading on the leading leg of the fencer. So without a doubt, connective tissues will hypertrophy given frequent mechanical loading. And so lifting heavy, training heavy 2 or 3 days a week is a good thing over the long term for helping you develop stronger tendons and ligaments that will be more resilient in years to come. Now, if you do that heavy, intense loading on a daily basis, you will actually maybe go down a different pathway towards injury, because just like muscles break down on a microscopic level from heavy training, so do connective tissues. That heavy loading 2 or 3 days a week is slightly catabolic. And if you do too much of it, the collagen falls behind and becomes disorganized, and you actually end up with weaker tendons that become injured. You head into tendinopathy. So you need the right amount of loading, you need the right amount of rest, you need proper nutrition, lots of protein, lots of glycine and proline, those two collagen-specific amino acids, to all be coming together over the long term to help you get your connective tissues to slowly add collagen content and hypertrophy. Now, there's another adaptation that can take place depending on the type of training you're doing, and that is a stiffening of the collagen. Those collagen fibrils are like the fibers inside of a climbing rope. You cut your climbing rope, you see all those white fibers. Well, that is how collagen fibers align longitudinally in your tendons and your extracellular matrix or your ligaments, and it gives them strength. But what gives them stiffness is actually this cross-linking that connects the fibers. Think of a wooden truss in the ceiling or in the structure of your house. That wooden truss has these cross braces. Well, in our body, there is what's called enzymatic cross-linking, which forms and connects the fibrils and adds stiffness to the system. That stiffness is what increases the rate of force development, gives you higher performing tendons. However, if your tendons and ligaments get too stiff, they actually can become more prone to injury. So more stiffness to a point is good, but it needs to scale with your muscle strength. If you have stiffer tendons, then your muscles are strong. Or conversely, if you have stronger muscles, then your tendons are stiff. There's kind of a mismatch. And that mismatch is what often results in injury, muscle injury or tendon injury. And so the trick over the long term is to scale muscle strength and tendon strength and stiffness together over time. So stiffness is good to a point, but too much stiffness can get you injured. And so for folks that are injured or prone to injury, you actually want to reduce stiffness in your connective tissues. And so this is where, if you understand what the training does in terms of the adaptations, you are empowered. And just let me leave you with one nugget. Again, there'll be a lot more detail in the podcast and in the white paper. But to increase stiffness, if you're a healthy climber or athlete that wants to stiffen the connective tissues, kind of like tightening the suspension of a sports car so that you have a higher rate of force development and more efficient connective tissues, you do it through reactive training, through plyometric training, through brief, forceful training. Brief, forceful training, the force passes through the tendon rapidly, almost instantaneously, in just hundreds of milliseconds. The force goes through the tendon, and that provides an adaptation that the body responds by increasing the enzymatic cross-linking and increasing the stiffness. However, if you do the opposite of that quick, brief, forceful training, which the opposite would be isometric training, whether it's an isometric hangboard or holding a pull-up position like this, or doing density hangs on a bar like this, or doing with your legs isometric, or even slow eccentric contractions where you have a 30-second eccentric contraction or a 30-second isometric contraction. Those very slow, sustained contractions, the collagen fibrils actually slide the force is going through them very slowly and continuously. And that sliding of the collagen fibrils breaks the enzymatic cross-linking, and that reduces the stiffness in the system. And again, that is a good thing if you are prone to injury or if you're trying to rehab a connective tissue injury. You want to do the eccentric loading, the isometric, the long duration isometric loading. That would be a very smart thing to do when trying to rehab elbow tendonitis or some type of a finger injury. Again, the amount of weight needs to be appropriate. It can't be too low, but it also can't be too high. And so that's where, again, a physiotherapist or a good coach can help give you guidance on that. But again, you think of isometric and eccentric contractions as increasing compliance or reducing stiffness in the connective tissues, which is good for injury prevention or injury rehab. But if you're a healthy athlete wanting to enhance performance heading into your performance season so you can sprint faster or be more powerful with your upper body or have a quicker rate of force development in your finger flexors, well, then you want to do those brief, rapid rebound or plyometric type exercises. Campus training would be a classic example, or power pull-ups. Those brief, forceful, almost instantaneous exercises are what stimulate the body to increase the cross-linking and increase the stiffness. So as you can sense, this is exciting stuff. It's empowering stuff, but it's also kind of hard to sort out and completely understand on first exposure. And that's the beauty of downloading my white paper tomorrow, is that you can sit down with a highlighter and actually go through it and really come to understand the science. Okay, I know I ended up talking a lot longer than I wanted to. So let's get to just a couple of questions here, and I need to move on with my work day here. So a comment from Mark Heilman: I'm at my shop around the corner. Yes, I know Mark Heilman. I just climbed with him the other day. So thanks for tuning in from the Red River Gorge. From Davey Crockett. Wow, that's interesting. Would you approach training and climbing frequency differently based on age of the climber? As a climber nearing 40, my focus tends to be on injury prevention, mobility, and feel like my power suffers. Yeah, definitely. I mean, age is, you can't train in your 40s like you did in your 20s, or I can't at age 60 train like I did when I was 40 or 20. It has to change, but there's also no cookie cutter approach. You at age 40 can be different from other 40-year-old climbers. So ultimately you need to find out and, kind of suss out what is right for you, Davey Crockett. And yeah, generally recovery is slower, but you can do things to speed that up. Again, really, yes, the older you get, the more crucial diet is, and dietary protein. I would get blood work every quarter or twice a year to see where your hormone levels at, because they are changing as you go through your 40s, 50s, and 60s in terms of your thyroid hormone, testosterone, a number of other things. So really try to dial in nutrition, just a comprehensive approach to sleep and nutrition and recovery can help you recover faster at age 40 than you would otherwise. When it comes to strength and power training, those ballistic exercises like campus training, be careful. They are potentially even more injurious for an older climber than a younger climber. That being said, I still do that type of training at age 60. I do sometimes feel like I'm tweaking myself from it. So you need to just have a dash of that power training. The strength training, your body can handle it, again, as long as it is cautious and not overboard. I generally do max strength training only 2 days a week when I'm in training mode. And when I'm in climbing mode, I really don't do any of it. Maybe just a brief single workout a week just to kind of keep me tuned. But the real magic for older climbers is endurance and power endurance. Those are areas where physiologically we can maintain and even continue to improve quite a bit. And you can potentially improve your strength as well, depending on your training frequency. For me, I've been a hard trainer for 40 years, and so my max strength hasn't really gone up in my 50s and into age 60. But the good news is it hasn't gone down. I'm still as strong as I was at 40, but I'm not breaking new ground anymore. That ship has sailed. I'm now in a maintenance game when it comes to strength and power. But endurance is an area that, with proper training and a lot of volume, a lot of submaximal volume, you can still make gains and perform harder, especially as a route climber. So there's some nuggets. I'd be happy to talk with you on a consult if you really want to get down to the nitty-gritty details, which is important. You know, a younger climber can get away with doing more things wrong in their training and still, you know, progress. But the older you get, the wiser you have to be and the smarter you have to be in terms of your training and trying to get everything right, put the whole puzzle together. Next up, hey coach, been working on my front lever for a while now. I can achieve a full extension, but form sags a bit in the middle. What other training tips do you have to help me correct this? Yeah, that's not uncommon. That, you know, when you first nail your front lever, there might be a little sag in your midsection. That's actually a lack of posterior chain strength. So you're obviously plenty strong for that front lever through the shoulders and through the anterior core. But the posterior core, which creates stiffness through the back of your legs, your glutes, your lower back, is a little weaker. And that's how climbers are. Climbers tend to have a strong anterior core, but a weaker posterior core. So to answer your question, add in a little bit of deadlifting. Add in, you know, some exercises for the posterior chain. Be careful, you know, because if it's something new, again, you don't want to overdo it and risk injury. But selecting just a couple of exercises. I deadlift when I'm at home in training mode twice a week. Nothing crazy. I'm kind of deadlifting mostly right around my body weight, maybe a little more on some days. But that will help you make some gains there because the posterior chain is part of your core conditioning. Okay. Question here, what's the link for the white paper? I haven't published it yet. It will be posted tomorrow. And in my podcast that releases tomorrow in the show notes, there'll be a link to the white paper. Also, if you go to trainingforclimbing.com, just spell it out, trainingforclimbing.com. You know, that's my website that I've had for 25 or more years. There'll be a pop-up box and it will say subscribe to Eric Hörst's Training for Climbing newsletter. I send out just 1 or 2 emails a month, so I'm not going to be spamming you with lots of emails, but I will release or email out that white paper to that email list later this week as well. So if you subscribe, anybody can subscribe to that email list and get a little dose of training in your email box from Coach Hörst once or twice per month. And I guess we'll just do one more question and then we'll call it a day. This from Mark Heilman, can you touch on hangboarding for finger strength? Well, you know, stronger muscles of any kind come from doing near maximal loads. It doesn't have to be PR. You know, that's a mistake climbers make and powerlifters make. You know, you don't want to be going to the gym every time trying to do a PR with your squat, your deadlift, or for a climber, your pull-ups or your finger peak finger force. You know, maybe once a month you test that just to have kind of a benchmark. But your training should, you know, for strength should be at around 85 or 90% of your maximum voluntary contraction. So whatever your PR is for your fingers, you know, drop down 10% or so, and that's a good training weight. Now, just kind of how do you gauge that weight on a fingerboard? Well, it would be selecting an edge or adding weight to your body so that you can hang for about 7 seconds or so. Generally, when you're training finger strength, it's best to leave a second or two in the tank. So whatever your max weight is on, let's say on a 20 millimeter edge on a hangboard, whatever the max weight is you can hold, let's just say 100 pounds for 7 seconds. I would train with 85 or 90 pounds for 7 seconds. And because it's a little lighter weight, you might be able to hang for 8 or 9 seconds, but leave a second or two in the tank and just do the 7-second hang. And then generally, when you begin training, you would do 1 7-second hang, then rest 3 minutes, and then do that, you know, 3 or 4 more times for a total of maybe 5 maximal or near maximal hangs. That's a very brief workout. You don't need tons of volume because it's strength training. It's not endurance training. And so that could be enough. You could use the same protocol for if you use lifting edge, or I like to mix up and do a combination of hangboarding and lifts. And again, that's beyond the scope of this podcast right now to get into that. But again, it doesn't take a lot. It just takes the proper amount of load, which should be relatively high, and then execute that a few times with adequate rest in between. And that is a good finger strength workout. Finger endurance, like doing repeaters or developing or training aerobic endurance in the fingers, completely different protocol. You need to be going way lower intensity. You need to do way more volume and frequency. Okay, well, I guess we will call it a day here. If you're still sipping your coffee, join me for our final sip. And I appreciate you all tuning in here. Of course, this live stream video will be available on YouTube to view again on demand at the Training for Climbing YouTube channel. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe, ring the bell. If you want to follow me on Instagram, my Training for Climbing Instagram is training4 climbing. And so that's a good place to follow me on Instagram. And again, the podcast will drop tomorrow around 6 a.m. Eastern time. It's about 55 minutes long. It presents to you pretty much the full white paper, minus the abstract and the summary points. But you will get all that stuff if you download the white paper. And it's a free download, so you can get that, get your hands on that tomorrow. So until next time, maybe 2 or 3 weeks from now when we meet again for the Training Cafe. Until next time, be safe, be strong, and dear viewer, climb on.